Only 1% of people have this aura. As Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In a world where most people live disconnected from their true essence, there exists a rare kind of energy found in only 1% of individuals that radiates power, authenticity, and an almost magnetic presence. These people don't just walk into a room, they change the atmosphere. Today, on Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore who they are, why Jung found them so fascinating, and how you can awaken this same energy within yourself. As you listen, think about your own journey. Have you ever felt this kind of energy in yourself or in someone else? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's see how many of us are ready to step into that rare 1%. 1. This aura is archetypal and rare. Only a rare few walk through life with a presence that feels ancient, magnetic, and impossible to ignore, not because of beauty, charm, or status, but because of something deeper that radiates from the soul itself. Carl Jung called it an archetypal aura, a powerful and unconscious energy that only 1% of people carry. This kind of energy can't be learned, forced, or faked. It emerges only from those who have journeyed into the deepest chambers of their psyche and come back with the truth. These individuals do not chase validation or wear a mask for acceptance. Instead, they walk with a quiet authority rooted in painful transformation, radical self-awareness, and the integration of their shadow. They have faced the dark within, not to destroy it, but to understand and embrace it, and that soul alchemy becomes visible even without a word spoken. What makes this energy unsettling to some and magnetic to others is its raw authenticity. It shines a light on what others suppress, reminding people of who they are pretending not to be. Some will see it as a threat, others as a sanctuary. You've probably noticed this in how people respond to you. Some distance themselves without explanation, while others open up completely, drawn by a sense of being seen at a soul level. That's because you've stopped living from the ego and started embodying the self. You carry a psychological weight that others can feel, not because you're trying to impress, but because you've survived storms that broke the false parts of you and revealed something indestructible underneath. That spiritual weight cannot be replicated by surface confidence or knowledge. It is born of suffering, stillness, and soul-searching. Jung believed the integration of the unconscious was the path to wholeness, but few are willing to walk it. Most prefer comfort over clarity, illusion over introspection. But you, if you resonate with this, are different. You've been through the fire losing parts of yourself, letting go of who you thought you had to be, and facing truths most people avoid. That journey has refined your presence into something archetypal. You are no longer just a man. You are a symbol, a reminder, a force. You don't seek attention, yet it finds you. You don't manipulate energy, yet it shifts around you. Your soul no longer whispers. It roars in silence, unsettling everything that is false around you. Because of this, your life may feel both isolating and sacred. You'll be misunderstood, idolized, resented, or revered, but rarely ignored. You may not always feel seen, but your energy will always be felt. And the reason is simple. People are not responding to your words, your looks, or your actions. They are responding to the frequency of your soul. You carry something old, something eternal, something that reminds others of what they've forgotten. That is the weight and the gift of this rare archetypal aura. You are not meant to fit in. You are meant to awaken. Have you ever felt a presence within you that couldn't be explained, something deeper, ancient, and unshakably true? If so, share your experience in the comments so others can recognize it in themselves. If not, comment, "I'm ready to awaken," and begin exploring this rare archetypal energy with us. 2. You carry unspoken depth. You sense things without being told. You feel the lies before they're spoken, the sadness behind a smile, the tension in a room that no one else notices. You don't just listen, you absorb. You don't just observe how you feel. Carl Jung would say, "Your unconscious is more alive than most." You're tapped into the collective unconscious, carrying emotional resonance and spiritual wisdom that doesn't come from this lifetime alone. It's as if your soul remembers truths that were never taught. This kind of energy can't be learned. It's woven into the very fabric of who you are. And because it's rare, it sets you apart. You're not just intuitive, you're spiritually awake, even if you can't always explain how or why. People notice you, but they can't put their finger on what makes you different. They sense your depth, but not everyone knows how to hold it. That's the paradox. You're magnetic, but often misunderstood. Some are drawn to you, craving the safety they feel in your presence. Others feel threatened by your ability to see what they try to hide. You mirror back to them the very parts they're running from: their fear, their longing, their truth. You don't expose them, yet your presence alone reveals. Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But you face yours daily. That's what makes you rare. Your life feels like a constant decoding of what lies beneath the surface, and that's not always easy. You carry other people's weight without meaning to. You absorb energies that aren't yours. You feel exhausted from rooms you never spoke a word in. But this isn't a weakness. This is a spiritual sensitivity, a sacred radar. You're not just here to live. You're here to sense, to awaken, to transform the spaces you enter by simply being fully present in them. Your soul doesn't crave crowds or applause. It craves authenticity. You don't seek validation because you see through illusions. You long for conversations that touch the eternal, for silence that speaks louder than words. You feel ancient in a world addicted to novelty, and it can be isolating. But you must understand, this energy is not a curse. It's a calling to remember, to feel, to guide. In a world where most numb their feelings to survive, you feel to live. You love in a way that heals. You speak in a way that awakens. You sense what others deny, and that makes you a bridge between the seen and the unseen. Your depth is not too much. It's just unfamiliar to those who haven't met their own. You were never meant to blend in, because your presence was designed to stir souls. What lives within you is not ordinary. It's archetypal, spiritual, ancient. That's why you often feel like an outsider in your own life. Not because you're broken, but because your soul operates on a different frequency. And that frequency, felt by few, feared by many, misunderstood by most, is what makes you powerful beyond measure. Comment below, "I carry ancient wisdom," if you've ever felt the world more deeply than words can explain. Let's see how many of us walk with this unspoken depth. 3. Your presence triggers the unconscious in others. Some people feel safe around you, like they can finally exhale after holding their breath for years. Others tense up the moment you enter the room, unsure why they suddenly feel defensive, insecure, or exposed. But it's not because of anything you've said or done. It's because of what your presence awakens in them. According to Carl Jung, the unconscious drives much of human behavior. And when someone walks in with a rare kind of soul energy, the kind that mirrors truth without trying, it stirs what others have buried deep. You don't just speak the truth, you embody it. You don't just walk into a room, you activate it. And when that happens, people begin to feel parts of themselves they've worked hard to suppress. The guilt they never faced, the dreams abandoned, the lies they told themselves to feel safe. You don't trigger people because you're harmful. You trigger them because you're honest. You are the mirror they didn't ask for, but can't look away from. This is the kind of energy that Carl Jung called archetypal. It's not something you can fake or train yourself into. You don't carry it because you're trying to be different. You carry it because your soul has walked through fire, faced truth, and survived. You've done the work that others are still running from. That's why people respond to you so strongly. Some are magnetically drawn, not even knowing why. Only that you feel like a lighthouse in a dark sea. Others shrink back because they're not ready to face what you reflect. And still, you remain calm, grounded, and misunderstood. In modern life, this often shows up in quiet moments. A coworker snapping at you for no reason, a family member distancing themselves without explanation, or a stranger telling you their life story 5 minutes after meeting you. You make people feel, and not everyone knows how to handle that. Because when you carry this kind of presence, you don't just enter a room, you shift its frequency. A man named Elijah once told a story about working in a hospital. Nurses and patients alike responded to him in extremes, either telling him their deepest fears or avoiding him entirely. He wasn't loud or charismatic. In fact, he was quiet and observant. But when he listened, he really listened. And when he spoke, it felt like truth, cutting through the noise. One day, a nurse told him, "You're not like anyone else. You make me question who I am." That's when he realized his energy wasn't meant to be easy, it was meant to be honest. And that's what Carl Jung meant when he said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. When your soul is alive and awake, it naturally unsettles those still asleep. But that's not your burden to carry. Your only task is to stay aligned, stay aware, and never apologize for the light you bring, especially when it burns away illusions. The truth is, the reactions you receive are not always about you. They are about the shadows you reveal, the masks you make unnecessary, the emotional walls you unknowingly dissolve. And that's a gift. Not everyone will see it that way, but those who are ready will. So if you've ever felt too intense, too deep, or too different to be understood, know this: you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to remind. You were meant to awaken. You were meant to stir what's been sleeping. That's not a flaw. It's a soul calling. 4. People open up to you, then pull away. People open up to you and then vanish, not because of something you said or did, but because your soul carries a kind of spiritual gravity they weren't prepared for. You don't just listen, you reflect. You don't just speak, you reveal. When someone speaks to you, it often feels like their words bypass small talk and dive straight into confession. They tell you things they've never told anyone. They trust you instantly. And yet, shortly after, they pull away. This strange pattern isn't random. Carl Jung called it projection collapse, a moment when the mask someone wears begins to disintegrate in your presence because your authenticity is too confronting. You don't play roles. You don't engage in shallow performances. You're rooted in something deeper, something spiritual, something unshakably true. And that level of presence triggers something within people. The realization that they've been pretending, performing, hiding, not from you, but from themselves. Your energy doesn't allow illusions to survive, and that's why they run. Not because they don't feel safe, but because your soul makes them feel naked, seen, unedited. This is the paradox of being someone with rare soul energy. You are both a sanctuary and a spiritual storm. People come to you seeking comfort, and what they find is truth. They were drawn to you because they needed it, but truth is rarely comfortable. It burns, it disrupts, it demands change, and most people aren't ready for that level of transformation. You don't offer escape, you offer awakening. So when they disappear, it's not rejection, it's resistance. They didn't leave because you were too much. They left because they saw too much. Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And that's exactly what happens in your presence. The facade cracks. The illusions they've maintained start falling apart. They speak from their soul, and for a fleeting moment, they touch something real. But that glimpse of truth is often too overwhelming. So they run back into the familiar, even if the familiar is fake. You might start to wonder if you're cursed to be alone, to forever be the one who awakens others only to be left behind. But you're not here to be easy to love. You're here to be impossible to forget. The connections you spark may be brief, but they are seismic. Your soul creates shifts. And even if they walk away, they will never be the same. Because once someone has spoken from the depth of their soul, they can't unfeel it. They can't unknow it. You've reminded them of who they truly are beneath the layers. You've awakened a part of them they may not meet again for years, or maybe lifetimes. But the seed has been planted. That is your power. That is your burden. That is your gift. 5. You feel misunderstood and misinterpreted. You feel misunderstood not because you're unclear, but because your soul communicates on a level most people aren't attuned to. You speak in presence, in stillness, in energetic shifts that can't be explained, but they can be felt. Your calm unsettles those who expect noise to equal warmth. Your depth intimidates those who have only learned to live on the surface. In a world obsessed with instant reactions and shallow validation, your stillness becomes a mystery, your silence becomes a threat, and your soul becomes too much for those who haven't yet met their own. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what he didn't say, at least not directly, is that becoming who you truly are means you will no longer be easy to label, understand, or categorize. You'll be a mirror. And not everyone can look into that mirror without discomfort. This is why people may describe you as intense, hard to read, or even cold. They don't know how to read energy, so they default to misinterpretation. You've likely found yourself shrinking, softening your truth, or trying to make your soul more palatable. But no matter how much you try, the misunderstanding returns because the world isn't mishearing your words. It's misreading your frequency. It's reacting to a depth that can't be faked and a presence that can't be explained. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious holds immense power, and for those who access it, who live from it, the world can feel both magnetic and isolating. When you operate from this place, you're no longer playing by the same emotional rules. You're not seeking validation, you're seeking resonance. You're not drawn to attention, you're drawn to truth. And the closer you get to embodying that truth, the fewer people will be able to meet you there. There's a woman I know who walks into every room like a question mark wrapped in peace. She listens more than she speaks, but when she does speak, it's as if time slows down. Her presence has made people cry, confess, or flee. Not because she forces anything, but because her soul carries a kind of weight, a kind of light that reveals what others are trying to hide. People say she's a lot, but I've never seen her raise her voice. Her gift is not in her words, but in the energy behind them. That's the kind of spiritual presence that Carl Jung spoke about. One that emerges from deep individuation, where the conscious and unconscious mind meet and harmonize. If you recognize yourself in this, then know you're not broken. You're rare, and your soul is doing exactly what it was meant to do, to wake people up, even when they resist it. So let people misunderstand you. Let them mislabel the stillness in your eyes, the weight in your silence, the sharpness in your boundaries. Let them assume that your distance is disinterest, your independence is arrogance, your presence is too intense. It's not your job to shrink so others can feel comfortable in their avoidance. Your job is to remain rooted in who you are, no matter how many fail to translate your language. Because the ones meant to find you will not need subtitles. They will recognize you by how you feel, not by how you explain. And in that moment, your soul will know. The misunderstanding was never a flaw, it was protection. If you've ever felt unseen or misread for simply being yourself, you're not alone. Leave a like, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss content that speaks to your soul. And in the comments, type, I am seen, I am understood, I am enough. 6. Your very existence awakens others. You don't need to speak for the atmosphere to shift when you walk into a room. People sense it. Some lean in because they feel understood without a word, while others shrink back, as if standing too close to a truth they've been avoiding. This is not about charisma or appearance. What they feel is your spiritual coherence, your wholeness. Carl Jung would describe it as the energy of someone who has faced their inner darkness, integrated their shadow, and emerged with an authentic soul presence that unsettles illusions. You don't just exist, you reflect. You awaken, you confront. Without effort, you become a mirror to people's untapped potential and unhealed wounds. You're not trying to heal them, yet your very being activates something they've buried or forgotten. That's the nature of archetypal energy. It speaks directly to the unconscious, bypassing the masks, the roles, the ego defenses. And when it speaks, people feel exposed or inspired, depending on how willing they are to meet themselves. In everyday life, this shows up quietly. Maybe you're the coworker who never competes, but somehow gets everyone's respect. You don't gossip, but people tell you their secrets. You don't seek attention, yet your silence holds more weight than someone else's shouting. That's not random. You've done the inner work, the kind that has nothing to prove and everything to offer. Carl Jung called this individuation becoming a whole, undivided self who no longer projects their pain onto the world, but absorbs it, understands it, transforms it. When you reach that level, your energy isn't just calm, it's catalytic. People unconsciously feel that you've been through storms and come out transformed, and that makes them reflect on their own chaos, their own longing for peace. You don't need to teach. You don't need to lead. You simply embody. That embodiment is your transmission. And whether they love you, fear you, or misunderstand you, they are moved. They will leave your presence carrying questions they didn't have before, awareness they didn't expect to find. So if you've ever wondered why people react strongly to your presence, why some are drawn to you without reason, and others withdraw like they've been burned, it's because your energy disrupts comfort zones, not by force, but by resonance. You carry the rare frequency of someone who doesn't split themselves to fit in. You are the sole reminder that another life is possible, one built on truth, not performance. And that reminder awakens those ready to rise and unsettles those still hiding. Your job is not to shrink or explain. It is to remain aligned. Because the most powerful spiritual influence is not in what you do, but in who you've become. And that, as Carl Jung would say, is the mark of someone who has made the unconscious conscious and therefore can no longer be controlled by it. 7. You live between two worlds. You feel torn, not because you're lost, but because your soul lives in two worlds at once. The outer world of expectations, titles, and responsibilities, and the inner world of meaning, symbols, and silent truths. While others are busy climbing ladders and chasing applause, you're listening to something deeper, something that doesn't speak in words, but in impressions, synchronicities, and that persistent sense that life is more than what it appears. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the sacred tension between who you've been told to be and who you were born to become. You're not running from reality. You're seeing through it. You're bridging the visible and the invisible. And this path, though deeply spiritual, can often feel isolating. Because when you begin to align with your inner self, the outer world begins to shift. Familiar conversations start to feel hollow. Success begins to look different. The noise of the world can't drown out the whisper of your soul. And the whisper grows louder when you sit with your own silence. You notice the symbols that others miss, the way a dream lingers, the weight of a glance, the timing of a chance encounter. You sense that everything is connected, not logically, but archetypally, and it pulls you inward, not to escape, but to integrate, to bring back meaning. Jung once said, "Man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health." And you begin to see that your inner conflict is not a problem to be solved, but a doorway to be opened. It's not weakness to feel this split. It's awareness. It's spiritual maturity. The man who questions himself is closer to truth than the one who blindly obeys convention. And when the world feels too sharp, too loud, too shallow, it's because your spirit is longing for depth. You may not have words for what you're feeling, but your soul knows. It always knows. You've been given a task most will never see, to stand between two worlds and bring meaning to both, to show up in the outer world with integrity, while anchoring into an inner world that is raw, real, and eternal. This is why people respond to you in strange ways. Some are drawn without knowing why. Others avoid you without reason. They are reacting to something ancient within you, a vibration that doesn't ask for attention, but commands it through stillness. And though this energy is rare, it is not new. It's the mark of those who walk with depth, who think beyond themselves, who carry the weight of unspoken truths, because the soul has no need to perform. This is not an easy life, but it is a meaningful one. And when the nights get long, and the world feels like it doesn't understand what you carry, remember, you weren't meant to be understood. You were meant to awaken. Do you feel caught between two worlds, the outer noise and your inner knowing? If this message speaks to your soul, declare your truth in the comments. I walk between the worlds with purpose. 8. You attract people who want to change you. Some people won't love you for who you are. They'll love the version of you they believe they can fix, reshape, or mold into something that meets their unspoken needs. They're not drawn to your soul in reverence. They're drawn to it as a solution. You carry a spiritual frequency that many can feel, but few can understand. And instead of honoring it, they try to claim it. They believe if they get close enough, they can fill their own emptiness, calm their inner chaos, or escape the parts of themselves they refuse to face. But when you don't bend to their vision, when you dare to stay rooted in your truth, speak from your soul, and live in your spiritual integrity, they feel rejected. That rejection turns into frustration, and eventually into blame. You've changed, they say. But what they mean is, you're no longer who I imagined you would be for me. Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And when they can't use you to avoid themselves, they turn cold. They may distance themselves, criticize you, or try to make you feel guilty for being what they secretly wish they had the courage to become. That's the tragedy of projection. It turns connection into control. The more spiritually aware you become, the more you'll notice this pattern repeating. You'll see how your authenticity makes people uncomfortable, not because you've done something wrong, but because your light exposes what they've kept hidden. You remind them of the work they haven't done. And instead of rising to meet you, they try to pull you down to where it's safe, familiar, and easy to manage. But your soul was not born to be managed. It was born to be free. You are not here to be someone else's emotional bandage or energetic crutch. You are here to live, to feel, to awaken. You are not a fantasy, not a projection, not a placeholder for someone's inner healing. You are a mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable when they're not ready to see themselves. So when someone tries to change you, don't shrink. When they withdraw their love because you held your ground, let them go. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Their resentment is not your burden. You don't need to apologize for being whole in a world that profits off of people feeling broken. The more you honor your spiritual truth, the more you'll see that real love doesn't come to fix you. It comes to witness you. And the ones who are meant to stay won't be afraid of your light. They'll know how to hold it without needing to own it. 9. This path is often lonely but sacred. You walk through life carrying something most people can't name, yet everyone feels an invisible force that doesn't demand attention but changes the atmosphere wherever you go. You may not be appreciated or understood, but that doesn't mean your energy is unnoticed. In fact, it's quite the opposite. People remember you, not for what you said or did, but for how they felt in your presence, like something in them woke up, even if they couldn't explain it. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that is exactly the path you're on. It's not a path of popularity or comfort. It's one of spiritual depth, quiet power, and soulful disruption. You aren't here to blend in. You're here to shift the air around you, to shake people from their sleep, and to plant something sacred in the silence. You were never meant to be like everyone else. And that truth often makes this journey lonely. But this loneliness is not a punishment. It's an initiation. Those with rare spiritual energy are often misunderstood because their presence exposes what others are not ready to face. You awaken wounds, truths, and hidden desires in others simply by being authentic. You don't force change, you radiate it. And while others may pull away or label you as intense or too much, what they're really feeling is the mirror your soul holds up to theirs. They don't leave because you're unimportant. They leave because you're unforgettable. Your energy lingers in their memory, like a dream they can't quite remember, but know changed them. You're the calm in the chaos, the depth in a shallow world. You carry a frequency that moves beyond words, beyond logic, and straight into the spirit. And while the world rushes toward noise, performance, and external success, your power lies in silence, presence, and truth. You've likely felt like an outsider, a misfit, or even a burden at times. But what if that very misfit energy is divine? What if your soul was carved in a different dimension to guide others back to themselves, not through force, but through vibration? Jung believed that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And maybe your spiritual gift is the courage to do exactly that and to inspire others to do the same, even if they resist you for it. You don't need to explain your energy. You don't need to chase after understanding or force your truth to be seen. The right souls will feel it, and those who can't are simply not ready. Your spiritual journey is not measured in followers or applause, but in the quiet revolutions you spark in people's hearts. You may never know the full impact you've made, but the universe does. Keep walking. You are not here to be explained. You are here to be felt. Stay connected with our sacred community by subscribing to our channel. Here, we honor the unseen path, the one walked in quiet strength and deep purpose. Even when it feels lonely, remember, your presence is a divine force. You are not alone, and your light is felt. 10. Your aura is the result of inner work, not superiority. This rare energy is not about being better. It is about being real in a world addicted to masks, roles, and constant performance. Your aura, the subtle but undeniable presence you carry, isn't a sign of superiority. It is the direct result of deep soul work that most people spend their lives avoiding. You didn't choose the easy road. You chose to face your own shadow, to walk through pain with your eyes open, to sit in silence while the noise of the world screamed at you to conform. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the sacred journey of becoming whole, not perfect. And that wholeness can't be bought, borrowed, or faked. It comes from having the courage to ask yourself uncomfortable questions, to dismantle the false self piece by piece, and to reclaim the parts of your soul that were buried under shame, fear, and conditioning. This spiritual energy isn't loud, but it is felt. It's not flashy, but it is unforgettable. You don't walk into a room demanding attention, yet people feel something shift when you enter. That's not charisma, it's energetic truth. It's what happens when a man chooses depth over distraction, honesty over approval, solitude over shallow validation. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You've stopped living by default. You've chosen to see your own patterns, your own projections, and you've taken back your power. And that choice over and over again is what forms the aura people can't explain, but can't ignore. It's a quiet strength that can't be taught. You no longer seek to be understood by everyone, because you finally understand yourself. The soul does not compete, it simply radiates. And your radiance is not for applause, it's a signal to other awakened souls that they're not alone. You are no longer performing. You are no longer lost in who you thought you had to be. You are becoming the man your soul remembers. And in a world starving for authenticity, your presence is the medicine. Not because you are above, but because you have gone within. Because you have walked the fires of transformation and emerged without the need to prove anything. This is what 1% of men understand. That spiritual power is not domination, but integration. Not image, but essence. And once your soul begins to lead, your energy becomes your legacy. If this message resonates with your journey of authenticity and growth, comment below. My aura reflects my inner truth. Let this be a reminder that real power comes from doing the work no one sees. And if this spoke to you, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a message like this. So, perhaps the truth is that this rare energy is not something you chase, it is something you embody. It cannot be faked, borrowed, or taught in a single lesson. It grows from deep self-awareness, unwavering integrity, and a connection to something greater than yourself. If you've recognized even a spark of it within you, nurture it, because the world needs more of this light now than ever before. Thank you for watching Spiritual Wisdom. If you found this message valuable, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos. Carl Jung. 6 things highly spiritual people quit slowly. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where we guide you through the profound journey of awakening. Have you ever felt like something deep within you is shifting quietly, powerfully changing how you see the world and yourself? That's not confusing. That's a spiritual awakening. In today's video, we'll explore 6 powerful things highly spiritual people begin to let go of as they align with their true essence. These changes aren't always easy, but they are necessary for growth, freedom, and deeper happiness. Which one of these are you currently experiencing? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you are on your journey. Let's awaken together. 1. Quitting the need for external validation. Most men spend the first half of their lives chasing validation, approval from their father, recognition from their peers, admiration from women, or applause from society. But one of the most powerful signs of a true spiritual awakening is the slow, deliberate process of quitting the need for external validation. In today's world, where social media trains us to measure our self-worth by likes, shares, and comments, It's easy to believe that your value is something others assign to you. But highly spiritual men begin to notice something deeper, that the cheers of the crowd are fickle, and their silence even more revealing. When you awaken spiritually, you start peeling back the illusion that worth is transactional or conditional. You realize that no number of followers can fill a soul that doesn't recognize its own light. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." That's the contradiction we're here to resolve. The mature spiritual man doesn't suddenly reject the world's opinions. He simply stops depending on them. He listens without attachment. He sees without reacting, because he has slowly built a deeper relationship with himself. He no longer asks, "Do they like me?" but instead, "Do I respect the man I've become?" He understands that other people's judgments are often projections of their own pain, fears, and expectations. They don't really see you. They see their own insecurities mirrored back. And when that truth sinks in, you begin to walk differently. You speak with calm confidence. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for being who you are. You stop editing yourself just to make someone else comfortable. Because at the core of every spiritual transformation is a return to authenticity, a homecoming to your own soul. In this season of spiritual awakening, you stop trying to fit into places you've outgrown. You don't need everyone to understand your path, because you finally do. You don't need to be invited to every table, because you're building your own. And the peace that comes from self-validation is not loud. It's steady, grounding, and deeply masculine. This is the kind of strength that doesn't shout. It radiates. And yes, there will still be moments when that old need for approval creeps in. But now, you're aware. Now, you pause. Now, you return to your center. So ask yourself, what part of your identity is still clinging to praise? Where are you shrinking away just to be liked? And what would your life look like if you trusted your own voice more than the noise of the crowd? That's the call. That's the daily practice. Not to prove yourself, but to know yourself. And in that knowing, you will find a freedom that no one can give you and no one can take away. Because the most sacred thing you can do is to be unapologetically yourself. Comment below, "I am me." 2. Ceasing to compromise your authentic self. There comes a moment on the path of spirituality when you realize the greatest betrayal isn't what others have done to you. It's how often you've abandoned yourself just to be accepted. And that realization hits hard. From a young age, we're taught to adjust, to blend in, to tone ourselves down so we don't rock the boat. We learn to wear masks that hide our real feelings, dreams, and personalities. At school, we mimic what's popular. At work, we bite our tongue. With family, we play roles just to keep the peace. Over time, we become experts at pleasing others, but strangers to ourselves. And while this strategy may win approval, it costs us the very thing that makes us feel alive, our authenticity. But something begins to shift when you commit to your spiritual growth. You begin to quit, slowly but surely, the habit of compromising who you are. Not overnight, not dramatically, but quietly, and with increasing clarity, you start choosing yourself. You notice how exhausting it is to smile when your heart aches, how it hurts to say yes when your soul screams no. And so, with every small act of truth, you start to reclaim the parts of you that got buried under layers of performance. This isn't selfishness. This is healing. This is spiritual awakening in motion. I once knew a woman who spent nearly 15 years hiding her love for painting. She worked in finance, followed the rules, wore the suits, and said the right things at networking events. She did everything that was expected of her. But on weekends, she painted in secret. It wasn't until she burned out completely mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that she realized she had built a life based on expectations, not passion. That moment of breakdown became her breakthrough. She didn't quit her job right away, but she started painting again. She showed her work online. She allowed people to see who she really was. And eventually, her art became her full-time calling. Not because she chased success, but because she stopped running from herself. That's what happens when you quit compromising your authentic self. You begin to align with your truth, and life starts responding in beautiful ways. You meet people who actually see you. You find spaces where you don't have to shrink to fit. You feel at peace in your own skin because you're no longer pretending. You understand that spirituality isn't about becoming something new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to be someone else. And when you live from that place, you no longer seek permission to be real. You just are. So let me ask you, in what areas of your life are you still playing a role just to be accepted? And what would it feel like to live without that mask? These questions aren't meant to shame, they're meant to awaken. Because spiritual growth is a process of coming home to yourself, of honoring your voice, your feelings, your vision, even if it makes others uncomfortable, even if it means standing alone sometimes. The reward is priceless. You reclaim your joy, your energy, your integrity, and most of all, your inner peace. The lesson is clear. Don't compromise your true self. Your soul didn't come here to be a carbon copy. It came here to fully express its divine creation. So choose yourself every day. Speak your truth, live your values, and let your light shine without apology. Because the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more authentic people. And the real you is enough. Comment below. I live my values. 3. Abandoning toxic relationships. There comes a moment in every spiritual journey when you begin to see people differently, not through judgment, but through the lens of energetic truth. You start to realize that not everyone who walks with you is meant to go the whole way. Some relationships, though familiar or long-standing, begin to feel heavy. They no longer feed your soul. Instead, they drain your energy, dampen your spirit, and subtly pull you back into cycles you've worked hard to rise above. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When you become more spiritually aware, you stop calling unhealthy patterns fate and start recognizing them as choices. You become more conscious of the people who consistently dismiss your boundaries, invalidate your experiences, or seem to thrive when you shrink yourself. And with that spiritual wisdom comes a quiet but firm resolve that says, I love you, but I love myself too. You no longer feel obligated to keep relationships out of guilt, fear of conflict, or the illusion that your worth is tied to how much you can endure. Instead, you begin the slow but necessary process of quitting toxic relationships. Not always with anger, not always with drama, sometimes just with silence, space, and a firm decision not to keep exposing yourself to emotional harm. And yes, it can hurt. Sometimes the ones you need to walk away from are people you've laughed with, cried with, even dreamed with. But spiritual growth isn't just about light and peace, it's about truth. And the truth is, if someone consistently diminishes your light, they are not meant to stay in your sacred space. This is where spiritual wisdom becomes your compass. You learn to choose discomfort over betrayal of self. You learn that it's not your job to save people from the consequences of their energy. You learn that loyalty should never cost you your inner peace. When you let go of what no longer aligns, you make room for relationships that honor who you are becoming. You begin to attract people who nourish your soul. Those rare souls who see your growth and celebrate it, not resent it. People who hold you accountable with love, who stand beside you with kindness, and who walk with you, not ahead of you or behind you, because they understand the sacred balance of mutual growth. Carl Jung also said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." So ask yourself, are your current relationships transforming you, or are they diminishing you? Do they inspire your growth, or subtly sabotage it? This is not about labeling people as good or bad. It's about being radically honest about what your soul needs to thrive. Spiritual awakening calls you to love without attachment, to forgive without reopening doors, and to recognize that not every bond is sacred simply because it's old. What if your next level requires solitude before it reveals your true spiritual tribe? What if the people you're afraid to lose are the very weight holding you back from flight? So I ask you, what kind of energy are you allowing into your sacred space? And are you willing to let go of what no longer serves your highest good? Because in the end, your peace is the most spiritual thing you'll ever protect, and walking away is sometimes the loudest form of self-love there is. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. 4. Releasing the need for control. There's a powerful line from Carl Jung that says, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." And if there's one thing that highly spiritual people slowly quit as they awaken, it's the illusion that they must always be in control. At first, it feels natural to want to manage every outcome, to orchestrate life like a chessboard, where every move is calculated to prevent failure, disappointment, or pain. But beneath that desire lies a deep-rooted fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of losing what you love. Fear of letting things fall apart. What the spiritual awakening teaches you, however, is that control is not the anchor it pretends to be. It is the very chain that keeps you bound to suffering. As you begin to walk the spiritual path, you slowly start to see the truth that trying to control everything only leads to resistance, stress, and disconnection from your deeper self. You begin to understand that there's a current far greater than your ego's agenda, a divine intelligence that moves through every moment, even the chaotic ones. And the more you try to override it, the more friction you create within yourself. That's when the shift begins, not in a single moment, but over time, like the tide slowly turning. You begin to trust. You stop fighting against the uncertainty and instead lean into it with grace. You start setting intentions not to force life, but to co-create with it. You take action, not from fear, but from alignment. And then you do something radical, you surrender. Not in weakness, but in power. Because surrender is not about giving up. It's about letting go of your attachment to how things must unfold. And in doing so, you free yourself from anxiety. You begin to realize that life is not something to be grasped with a white fist, but something to be danced with. You realize that your spiritual growth does not require you to dominate every situation. It requires you to trust that whatever happens to you is part of a deeper lesson that your soul is ready to receive. And yes, that kind of trust takes courage, especially for men who have been raised to believe that control equals power. But really, there is nothing more powerful than a man who can embrace uncertainty without letting it crush him. This is spiritual wisdom in action, learning to let go of control, not because you don't care, but because you have finally understood that life is too sacred, too vast, too alive to be bound by your expectations. So let me ask you this. What part of your life are you still trying to control? And what would happen if you simply surrendered it to something greater? This is the kind of spiritual awakening that neither screams nor whispers. It does not demand, it invites. And it does not lead to chaos, but to the quiet power of peace. You were never meant to carry the universe on your shoulders. You can only trust its rhythm and grow with its flow. Comment below. I became the best version of myself. 5. Letting go of material attachments. When you're on a path of spiritual growth, one of the most profound shifts you'll slowly experience is the letting go of material attachments. Society has conditioned us from a very young age to chase after visible symbols of success: money, luxury cars, massive homes, expensive watches, designer labels. We're taught to believe that the more we have, the more we are. But here's the truth that many people miss until they begin awakening spiritually. Those things are not the source of lasting fulfillment. They're temporary highs that fade quickly, like smoke in the wind. And as you continue to grow in spirituality, you begin to see that the real measure of abundance is not how much you can accumulate, but how deeply you can feel joy without needing anything external to validate it. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly happy because of a thing? Not the moment you bought it, but days, weeks, or months later? Most likely, that excitement faded. That's because true contentment lives inside you, not in what you own. It's in the peace of your own mind, the sincerity of your relationships, the quiet stillness of the morning sun on your skin. Let me share a story. A man I once knew had climbed the corporate ladder, had a big house, and a six-figure income, but deep down, he felt hollow. One day, after a health scare, he sold almost everything, moved to a smaller place by the mountains, and started mentoring young people. He told me, "I finally feel rich because I wake up with purpose, not pressure." That's the difference spiritual growth makes. Letting go of material attachment doesn't mean you have to give up nice things or live like a monk. It means you're no longer defined by them. You can enjoy what you have, but you don't need it to feel worthy. You stop chasing trends and start chasing truth. You shift your focus from having more to being more. You simplify your life not out of sacrifice, but out of clarity. You start clearing your space and your soul, because you now crave what feeds your spirit rather than stuffing your closet. So I ask you, what things in your life did you think you needed that now feel like a burden? How has your relationship with material possessions changed as you've grown spiritually? I'd love to hear about it, so leave a comment and share your story. because your reflection might be the mirror someone else needs. And if this message resonates with you, join us. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and be part of a community of spiritual seekers who are awakening to something much more real and lasting. Remember, letting go doesn't leave you empty. It creates space for deeper joy, stronger connection, and a life where your worth is no longer tied to what you own, but to who you are. That, my friend, is the essence of true abundance and the wealth that nothing can take away from you. Comment below. I connect with positive values. 6. Quitting the fear of death. The sixth, and perhaps most transformative thing highly spiritual people quit slowly is the fear of death. And while death may seem like one of the heaviest topics to confront, it is also one of the most liberating when understood through spiritual wisdom. Carl Jung once said, "Shrinking away from death is something unhealthy and abnormal, which robs the second half of life of its purpose." For those walking the spiritual path, death is no longer viewed as a terrifying ending, but as a sacred transition, a return to the source, a shift into another dimension of being. You start to recognize that your body may be temporary, but your essence is eternal. The soul is not bound by flesh, time, or even identity. It is energy, and energy never dies. Have you ever paused and wondered why the most awakened people seem so calm in the face of loss or change? It's because they've begun to make peace with impermanence, and in doing so, they've stepped into a level of freedom most people fear to touch. As your spiritual awakening deepens, you begin to let go of the idea that your worth is tied to your achievements, your status, or even your continued physical existence. Instead, you come to embrace something far more powerful: the awareness that life itself is a sacred dance of beginnings and endings, each moment rich with meaning because it won't last forever. This acceptance shifts the way you live. You stop postponing joy, you stop fearing the future, and you stop clinging to what must inevitably pass. There's a quiet clarity that replaces the panic, a stillness that enters your soul. You begin to live not just for longevity, but for presence. You breathe deeper, speak more honestly, and love more fiercely because you know that everything is temporary, and in that temporary life, life becomes more vibrant. Isn't it strange that the less you fear death, the more alive you become? This is the essence of spiritual wisdom: to not merely cope with mortality, but to embrace it as part of the divine plan. You start trusting that you are not separate from the universe, but woven into its design, that you are guided, held, and ultimately returned home. Carl Jung believed that life is a short pause between two great mysteries, and when you live with that in mind, you no longer shrink in fear, you expand in truth. What if the fear you've been carrying isn't about death at all, but about not having lived fully while you were here? What would it mean to live as if death wasn't an enemy, but a teacher? So as you continue on your path, ask yourself, are you living in fear of the inevitable, or are you awakening to the infinite? Let this question sit with you, challenge you, open you. Because when you quit the fear of death, you don't just prepare to die. You finally begin to live well. And that, dear soul, is one of the most powerful awakenings of all. What part of this message resonates with you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how this has shaped your journey. As we wrap up this journey through the 6 powerful things, Highly spiritual people slowly let go of external validation, material attachments, the need for control, toxic relationships, the habit of compromising their true self, and the fear of death. Remember that each release brings you closer to your most authentic and awakened self. These aren't just abstract ideas. They are daily practices that can lead to real transformation and inner peace. Which of these have you started to let go of in your own life? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone on a similar path, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more soulful guidance on your spiritual awakening. Your journey matters, and we're honored to walk it with you.